I'm going to take you to another part of the world, and I'm conscious of your time. I promise I could to you for hours. The Middle East, if you were commander in chief right now, a very different set of circumstances, very different terrain, very different enemy. How would you end the war in Gaza today if you could?
Well, I don't think you can actually end the war in Gaza at an acceptable situation for Israel without changing the strategy. And I've said this from the very beginning publicly to the defense minister of Israel in articles in foreignaffairs.com, et cetera, that what Israel should have been doing all along is essentially a counterinsurgency campaign in which you clear, hold, build, and very slowly transition control to Palestinian forces, starting in the north, working your way south, with gated communities created, population control measures that also employ biometric ID cards for those who are allowed to go back into the areas where their homes were, and then very careful big walls that keep the Hamas out once you have cleared an area. The problem is that they've been doing what's called clear and leave or raid and leave. And Hamas is probably still about the same strength it was at the beginning, though by no means are they as capable or combat effective companies, battalions, brigades. They're not as coherent. The communications is obviously disrupted and so forth, but they are still the most guys with the most guns. Look, I wanted Israel to achieve its three objectives, as stated by Prime Minister Netanyahu, to destroy Hamas, not just degrade them, which is what they have done, destroy them forever and not allow them to come back, keep Hamas from governing again, obviously. And there's no real government in Gaza now, but there still is some sort of quasi government, if you will. And apparently, Hamas has such huge reserves of funding that they're still, in some respects, actually distributing some money to some members of the organization,
Hmm.
and then to ensure that all the hostages are recovered. And none of those threes has been fully achieved, much less a fourth objective that I felt should have been established from the very beginning as well, which is to provide a better future for the Palestinian people in Gaza without Hamas in their lives. And the only way to do that is clear, hold, build, transition. And yes, it's very manpower intensive. It can be costly in certain respects, but the casualties continue right now.
Yeah.
Israel talks
Is
about
that what you
controlling
did in the
80 or
Middle
so
East?
percent of the territory. It actually,
Sorry to
yes,
interrupt that.
well, it's what we did during the surge.
Yes.
We had been doing clear and leave, essentially, or clear and hand off to Iraqi forces that were no longer combat effective because the civil war had reached such terrifying levels of violence by late 2006. So in early 2007, when President Bush announced the decision to surge additional forces, the real surge that mattered most was a change in ideas. It was a surge of ideas, the change in strategy from clear and leave to clear and hold, build, transition very slowly, rebuild the Iraqi forces so they could hold the ground as we slowly transition to them, et cetera. For example, Fallujah was 300,000 people. We told them, we're coming in, we're going to get Al Qaeda out of your lives. And for this time, we're going to keep Al Qaeda out because
Yeah.
we're going to live with you in your neighborhoods. And we're going to create big walls, gated communities. They spend a lot of money in Florida for a gated community. We're going to give it to you for free. We'll control the entry control point until we have trusted partners that can do that. You'll have a biometric ID card that allows you to come and go from your neighborhood, but only your neighborhood and then common areas. And there was a lot of doubt because we'd gone in and killed a lot of bad guys before and then left and they came back. In this
Yeah.
case, we stayed. And a great Marine and Army force um, cleared that area really quite quickly, relatively speaking, a matter of weeks. And it bounced back very, very quickly. This has never been done in Gaza. The people have been pushed around. Obviously, there's a huge humanitarian crisis, frankly, that has been built up there. The challenges of trying to provide food to the people because you don't have security.
Yeah.
There's a famous, iconic figure from Vietnam named John Paul Van who used to say that security may be 10% of the problem or 90% of the problem. Whatever it is, it's the first 10%. or the first 90%. Without it, you can't do these other things.
Yeah.
I remember during the early months of the surge, the development experts and others would say, well, General, we'd like to do this here now. And I said, look, we don't have security there yet. When we do have security, however, we want you to come in because that's what solidifies the security gains. It's what you do now to show the people that life will be better than it was when Al Qaeda or the Iranian supported Shia militia were in their neighborhoods. And they should support this effort rather than oppose it because it's going to be better for them. And that happened in community after community. Fallujah, Ramadi, Bakuba, Mosul, Samarra, you name it, even parts of Baghdad, in which we used a lot of the walls as well. And that's what should be the approach there. It should have been from the beginning. The taking of Gaza City, I don't know what taking means. If you don't, again, employ population control measures, even if you clear the entire city of 1 million people of Hamas, and that's a very, very challenging task, if you don't then segment it and keep them out using walls and so forth, you won't have achieved anything. And then if you don't get the people back into the areas where their homes are, so they can be provided better shelter first and then rebuild homes, schools, clinics, roads, bridges, markets, and all the rest of that. And again, the idea that Arabs will go in there and fight Hamas for Israel is just not realistic. So I still find real concerns about the approach that's being taken. By the way, again, we by no means got it always right. It
Mm.
took us 7 or so years in Afghanistan just to get the big ideas right, another year to get the
Mm.
inputs right, and then we only kept them right for about 6 months before we started drawing down. And
Yeah.
eventually that drawdown became more based on conditions in Washington than it was based on conditions in Afghanistan. By the way,
Yeah.
we didn't need to end that quote endless war. We hadn't lost a soldier in 18 months. The
Yeah.
cost was not prohibitive at all. The allies all wanted to stay. There were 3 times as many of them as we were. So again, you sometimes have to challenge this wisdom, supposed in quotes, that says you must end endless wars. In the case of Gaza, you've just got to get the strategy right and conduct a comprehensive civil military counterinsurgency campaign. Hamas is now very much insurgents, guerrillas. They're not a formal army that can be fought and decisively defeated and they never resurrect. They just keep replacing their losses. There's no end of angry young men who are unemployed, willing to take up a weapon. They're not as effective, they're not as capable, but they can still kill Israelis, and they've been doing that on a fairly regular basis. And you don't have real something to show for it. You don't control actual areas. So that's the question I have about this is taking Gaza City. What does that mean? How does it manifest itself on the ground? Will there be the kind of population control measures that should have been employed from the very beginning so that when you clear Hamas from an area, you can keep them out and you just keep going after them progressively? I said do it from north to south, come a kilometer in, east-west wall, 3 north-south walls. You have 4 gated community. And walls are easy to put up, by the way. We did miles and miles and miles of walls every night with every single unit that was engaged in these counterinsurgency campaigns. So that would be my counsel. Again, I've offered it before. I understand that there's
Mm.
no counterinsurgency field manual. I know they have not done it before. These are the most adaptive, innovative, capable soldiers in the world. They'll pick this up very, very quickly. There's no rocket science about going from home to home to home and clearing every building, floor, room, cellar, and blocking every tunnel entrance and doing it progressively so the enemy can't come in behind you and reoccupy some area that you've already cleared. They can do that very quickly and then try to get the people back into these areas. And now, because there's security, you can give out food without
Mm.
confrontations that result in shooting and this kind of thing. You have security, and security has not been established anywhere in Gaza, with the exception of within the Israeli bases, and that's not where it counts. It's where it counts is with the population itself, and whether they can be provided humanitarian assistance, then restoration of basic services, then reconstruction. And over time, then you'll get Arab forces that will come in to help out because they're not fighting against fellow Arabs. Even if they hate Hamas, they're not going to go in and fight Hamas
Yeah.
for Israel.
I feel like, and you know far more about this than I do in a million ways, but initially the population, I think, were very much more supportive of Hamas and in terms of their vehement hate for Israel and for the Jewish population. Now I think that's shifted.
No question
We're
about it.
we're
Sure.
starting to see that rhetoric come out where they are angry at Hamas, and it would now be an opportunistic time for Israel to come in and we can help you live a life without them. And whereas at the start of the war, it just wouldn't have been possible. But now I think the population would be very, very open to that.
I think that's a very correct assessment. I'd be careful to say that they would welcome Israelis. I think they'll
No.
only welcome Israelis once they see that their lives are demonstrably better because the Israelis have gotten Hamas out of their lives. There's still huge residual support for Hamas for fighting against the Israeli Defense Forces and so forth and so on. But I think you're right that I think the people, look, at this point, they just want to survive. They
Yeah.
are at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
at the level of food, water, and shelter. And if someone provides that to them, I think that they will very quickly overlook any historic animosity
Yeah.
and come to accept that that's a better life for them. And then as it gets better and better, as was the case again in Fallujah, which was arguably the toughest. But again, keep in mind, much, much smaller than even Gaza City, not even a third the size of Gaza City, no tunnel infrastructure such as you have there. So Gaza is much, much more challenging than all of our difficult urban fights put together. But nonetheless, the appropriate way to go at it is what we have been discussing here.